Okay, good afternoon again. My name is Susan Klein. I'm the Director of Training and Change Management at LTech. I'm joined by Brian McNamara, Deployment Manager. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Susan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So Brian is in New Jersey. I'm in California. Through the power of Google Apps, we can conduct this webinar together. Welcome, everyone. Just a few. We're going to be talking about managing users in the Google Apps control panel today. This is the control panel for GoToWebinar. When you first sign in, you'll probably be set up to use the mic and speakers. If you want to use the telephone, select the Use Telephone Radio button. Then you'll have to enter an access code and a PIN. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar today. You can type your question in the question panel down here, and we'll take them as they come in, and we may defer some towards later in the presentation if we're going to be going over that information. But the focus today is on the Google Apps control panel. If you want to hide this screen, you can click on this double-headed arrow here. You can zoom in on the screen with this button. If you'd like to answer your question live on the air, which we like, you can use the hand icon here to raise your hand. Let's just get warmed up here. I made a few polls. I want to know what is your role at your organization? Are you in IT? Are you in training? Something else? Do one of these three categories fit what you do? Okay, I see almost all of you have voted. Okay, so this is I'll share the results with you. Okay, the majority of us are in IT, and then we've got a few people in other roles in the organization. So welcome to everyone. And we are also curious about how long has your organization been using Google Apps? So you may have to think about this for a moment. When did you first start using Google Apps? And I think by that we mean as your mail and calendar system. I can see the results coming in here. We've got a couple of veterans on here, Brian, a couple more than 2 years.
Good stuff.
So here we go. 20% are not using Google Apps yet. Maybe you're still checking it out, or you plan to switch over soon, and then a quarter of you less than 6 months. And 40% 1 to 2 years, and 10% more than 2 years. So you've probably seen some major changes to the control panel in the last 2 years. So we're going to just do a quick review. You know us. We're LTech. We are your Google Apps Enterprise partner. We do deployments, we do training, change management, business process re-engineering. We advise you on third-party applications you may want to use that integrate with Google Apps. And we also do Amazon Web Services. I believe we're doing a special webinar about that, right, Brian? Is that in May?
Yep, we do have an upcoming webinar in May, and hopefully it'll be the first of many. And
Sarah, thank you for reminding me to actually show my screen. I think it's more helpful when you can see my screen, so thanks for that. So when you think of the cloud and business, think about LTech. That's what we are doing. And then as far as training, we offer a variety of training services. Training change management is part of the whole process of going Google from the beginning, the planning, getting your users ready, to the training and communication and support. So we offer all of these services when it comes to training and change management. We do these webinars once a month. Everyone is invited to these webinars. Each of our clients gets 5 seats at these webinars. I'm going to come back to this, but here is what we are going to talk about today as far as the control panel. We're going to look at how you access the control panel, provisioning users, assigning users to groups and suborgs, turning on and off services, managing conflicting accounts, renaming users, resetting passwords, assigning admin permissions, deleting users. Some of the best practices around deleting users and suspending users, and then some of the known issues and some of the questions that come up a lot when it comes to the Google Apps Control Panel. Now, Brian is the subject matter expert here. He has been, how long have you been doing deployments now? Two years, Brian?
Little over 2 now, yep.
So you have probably seen all kinds of different scenarios, people coming from Lotus, coming from Google, maybe free consumer Google Apps, Outlook, GroupWise, and all converging onto this panel here, the control panel. So let's start with just accessing your control panel. You can always get to your control panel by just typing google.com/a/yourdomain.com. So I'm signed into, we use this kind of dummy domain, collaborationcorporation.com, and I'm here looking at my control panel. Brian, I have a question for you. I've noticed that companies that have a single sign-on, if I were to go to mail.google.com/a/their domain, I get the single sign-on page. But I don't see that when I go straight to google.com to this address.
Correct. So if single sign-on is enabled, as you correctly point out, whenever you hit a service URL, you'll be brought to the Google Apps login page. Now, the reason for that is if you're having an issue with your single sign-on application, you would still want to be able to log in as an administrator and potentially disable SSO. So it's a good end around.
Got it. Okay. So this is where you can always get to your control panel. It goes past SSO. I see a question came in, and maybe we just need a little clarification here. This question came in from Douglas, and he says, so why use LTech control panel instead of the Google supplied management? And we actually, we are talking about, this is the Google control panel. So we are, this webinar is about the Google supplied control panel.
Sure. I'll actually answer that one in the question thread, Susan. So if this is an existing LTech Power Panel user or someone who's looking at using Power Panel in the future, I'll be able to add a little more clarity there. But certainly don't interrupt, or I should say don't hold up on that. We can certainly circle back later, time allowing.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Thank you. Also, this presentation is being recorded. It will be on our Vimeo channel. We should have that up there in about 48 hours. So if you don't catch everything right now, you will have access to it. Okay, when a big use of the control panel is provisioning users, as in adding new users to your domain. Now you've got 3 alternatives for adding new users. You can do it one by one. You could do a bulk upload. So let's say you're a small company, you get 1 new user. You can add them, do a one-off, add them via the control panel. Or maybe you just hired a new group of individuals. You can then do a bulk upload. Or thirdly, you can do the directory sync. I'm going to demonstrate the one by one and then the bulk upload, and then Brian's going to talk a bit about when you would use these 3 methods. So let's say you're just going to add a new user. To do that in the control panel, that's in the Organization and Users tab. Click that up here. And to create a new user, here is the button to create a new user. So I would just add a first name and a last name. Okay, I'm going to add a new user. Here's my new user, Brad Pitt. I choose a username for him. If I can set a temporary password for him, or I can just choose create new user, and a temporary password will just be created already. So I'm going to choose create new user, and I then have the option to email these login instructions or print the login instructions for him. Notice if I select email instructions, I can then send an email with these instructions. It also gives the temporary password. Now maybe you would prefer to print them out. You can do that as well. So that's an example of just creating a new user. Now let's say you have about 10 new users to add. Well, a more efficient way to add those new users would be to choose under More Actions, Bulk Upload Users. Okay, so I choose Bulk Upload Users. I need to create a CSV, that's a comma-separated value file. Like Excel, you could create it in Excel and save it as a CSV. And I just need these 4 columns: email address, first name, last name, and password. So I could add my 10 users here, and then I would upload that CSV file. If I am adding email addresses these are all new email addresses, it will create new users. I can check these boxes if I'm doing an update of existing users. But right now we're focused on new users. You can also require a password change automatically when a new or updated user signs in. So I recommend selecting this option for security so that the first time the user signs in, they'll be prompted to create a password. And then we've got directory sync, which would be adding the new user already to your existing LDAP directory, any directory that's synced with Google Apps. So Brian, do you mind talking to us a little bit about when you recommend doing each of these methods?
Sure. So, rather than actually going through the mechanics which Susan already covered, you really need to think about how users are added and managed in your environment. So if you're a smaller organization that may not have an existing LDAP server for user management, there's nothing wrong with doing one-by-one user creations. This can be a little bit unwieldy, so if you are looking at potentially adding users en masse, so during a Google Apps deployment, this is actually very, very common where we would do a bulk upload of a large number of users that can be done in one shot. Option 3, directory sync, is really more suited for organizations that would like to manage their users, their groups, their profile data, and their shared contacts out of an existing LDAP server. So it isn't just a matter of provisioning on a one-time basis. Directory sync can actually be configured to run on an ongoing basis. So it's a tool that will actually do an LDAP query, and based on the results, it'll look at Google Apps to determine what action should take place, whether that means adding users, whether it means suspending or deleting users, adding profile data, etc. So really, option 3 allows you to take advantage of infrastructure that you already have in place.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that explanation.
No
looks like Adi, I'm pronouncing your name right, Adi. You have a question, so I'm going to unmute you. Are you there?
I'm here, but I was by mistake, so it's okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm good for now. Thanks.
Okay. I'll put your hand down. Okay. And so that is adding new users. Let's talk about assigning privileges to users. So when you add a new user, that new user will be listed in your user list. I think that we've got users listed here by their first name. I think, can we sort it? We can sort ascending or descending. So we can find the user. I can also do a search for the user. So let me find this Brad Pitt there, B. Pitt, do a search for him. There he is. I click on his name. Now I can, loading here. So here he is. Now in the Privileges tab, if he's going to be a Google Apps administrator, a full administrator, like a super IT user, super admin who can create users, delete users, rename users, and manage services, I would select this box. That makes him a super admin. So at LTech, Brian, he's our super admin. You may also want to create a user who's maybe a help desk user who has certain privileges for administration, but not all of them. So for example, maybe B. Pitt, he is a help desk. He works at the help desk, and we want him to be able to, for users to perhaps reset passwords or force a password change. And we're also under the user section, we're going to allow him to rename users and create users and perhaps move users into organizations. So I've given him these specific privileges. So I save the changes. Now Brad Pitt, when he comes into the Google Apps control panel, he'll be able to see users and rename users, move users, and create users. But for these other settings here, like the group settings, some of the reports and domain settings, I don't have these boxes checked, meaning he does not have access to manage those other services. So when he logs into the dashboard, he won't be able to access these settings for these other services. Brian, what do you usually recommend for someone who works at the help desk? What kind of privileges should they have?
Well, I mean, again, I'll use a very safe answer and say it depends. You know, it really depends on what the help desk is enabled to do within a given organization. So if you have, you know, we'll say a multi-tier support organization, it may not make sense to allow help desk users to create users, but perhaps just reset passwords where you know, user creation or deletion is a role handled by we'll say a higher level administrator, or even a different department altogether, like if you have a separate ID management group. So really, the good thing is this functionality is now enabled in the apps control panel without, I'll say, without trying to sound too salesy. One of the questions that was asked earlier is, you know, maybe why use LTech's Power Panel instead of, you know, rather than the native control panel. So our Power Panel application also enables delegated administration, but even on a more granular level. So it's good that Google sees the, you know, the whole and is now offering you know, the ability to have different levels of administration natively. If you feel that you may need to be a bit more granular, I would say please take a look at the LTech Power Panel application. But getting back to your initial question, Susan, I'll say it depends. But really do careful analysis to determine what's appropriate.
And so maybe would you say that analysis takes place before you even, that's in the initial project planning stages, right, when you would decide?
Sure. Who's responsible for what actions? It's very easy during a deployment to really get lost in the initial creation of users and the, you know, if appropriate, the migration of mail from an already existing mail system. But it's very important administratively to consider what needs to happen, you know, day 2, day 3, day 365, day 720, et cetera.
Thanks for that. And I saw some questions coming in about sub-organizations. We're going to go over that in just a moment. But first I want to talk about assigning users to groups. And I think that we should explain right now that there kind of are 3 things that Google calls groups. One kind of group is that in your personal contact list, here's my mail, I go into contacts, I have personal contact groups. They're the ones listed under my contacts. These are groups of email addresses from my contacts that I can send emails to. Okay. Then there's also user-managed groups. So do we have that enabled on Collaboration Corporation? Maybe not. User-created groups allow your users to create and manage their own mailing list. So those are user-created groups. Then there are the admin-managed groups. In the control panel, that's this tab here. And these are like mailing lists. You can create these groups that can be used as mailing lists. Groups can also be used for shared mailboxes. We'll talk about that in a moment. You can add a user to a group when you create either the group or the user. So let's go back to the Pitt. Sarah brought up a good point. I'm going to search for Brad Pitt. One of the known issues here, when you search your users, you can't search by first name or last name. At this point, you have to search by username. So if I were to search Brad, he would not come up. Okay, so to assign him to a group in his user information section, if I scroll down under groups, I can edit his group membership. I click on that link, and then I just choose the group that I want to add him to. Oh, how do I do? I thought I selected it. Now I'm not seeing the button. Do you see that, Brian, where I apply these groups?
Do not. Let's go back, yeah.
Yeah, let's go back here. So I chose this user is not a member of groups, edit group membership. I guess what actually I have to go into this individual group, so Ace Capital Group, and then add him, right. So from here, I choose add new members. I can start to type Brad B. Pitt. Within 24 hours, that username will appear when you start to type the name. But because I just added him, he's not appearing, so I'd have to manually add him here. But I can add more than one by just separating with commas. I can also, when I create a new group, add every user from my domain. And I can add him as a member or a manager. And I'll click add. And that adds him to this particular group. Brian, is there another way, maybe a more efficient way to add users to a group or mailing list?
Sure. So in the control panel, admittedly, it is a little bit clunky. And again, without getting too salesy, one of the features of the Power Panel application is that it does allow you to have that. It really does allow you to add users to a specific group very easily. Without having to go back into the individual groups themselves. If you do have any team members within your organization that do have development experience, one of the great things is that Google really does expose a great deal of functionality programmatically via APIs, so application programming interfaces for a number of different Google services. So if you need to provision users, manage user settings, many things can actually all be done programmatically.
Great. Okay. So that would be yes.
And Susan, I apologize there. The one other thing to keep in mind too, one of the tools that we talked about earlier for provisioning users was the directory sync tool. So this would be a good example of being able to take group membership in your existing LDAP server. So let's say you're using Microsoft's Active Directory for your identity management. You can actually manage that person's group membership based upon entries in Active Directory.
Great. So that's another win for Active Directory there. I wanted to mention as far as shared mailboxes, you can use groups as you may have used shared mailboxes in the past. For example, we have a group called training at LTech.com, and we have 3 members of that group. So whenever someone writes an email to training, it goes to all 3 of us. And when we respond, we can CC the group so people see that we responded to that email. We can also choose reply as and reply as that group name. So that's a way to have a shared mailbox without actually having to buy another email license. Okay, sub-organizations. Why would you want sub-organizations? Well, let's see. I think we have a hand up. I think Robert has his hand up, but he has not entered his audio pin, so I cannot unmute the mic, Robert. Okay. Question.
Sure.
Oh, I was just going to launch this tool here about, do you use suborganizations to restrict certain services? Are you currently doing that? So if you don't know, you can write, I'm not sure. So it looks like some of you are using suborganizations to restrict certain services. Some of you are not, and some aren't sure. And maybe that's because you don't know what suborgs are, and we're going to talk about that next. But I interrupted Brian, so go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, that's okay, Susan. One of the things that I think Robert asked earlier was what are the pros and cons of using suborgs. So, you know, I think if that was his question initially, I think this is actually a very good segue.
Perfect. So a suborg, it will allow you to create an organizational structure in Google Apps. Each user belongs to one of the main org or one of these suborgs. And if you have suborgs, you can specify which services are available to its users. So the real reason for, one of the reasons I would use suborgs is if you need to restrict certain services from certain groups. Like maybe you want to restrict chat from most of your users except from your sales team. Or maybe you want to restrict the access to Google Video to some users. So within the control panel, we've got our organizations and users. And I see here this is my main organization, collaboration, corporation, and then I've got some suborgs in here. They're listed here. So sales is a suborg. So to create a new suborganization, I just choose add suborganization. I can give this a name. I'll call this help desk. And then I've added that new suborg. Then I could then assign users to that suborg. And I can do that just by checking their names here. And from the Move To drop-down menu, I'll choose that suborganization. And you can only be in one suborganization, right, Brian?
That is correct. So in terms of the cons of suborgs is that a user can only belong to one organization at a time. So if you're in an EDU setting and you have a teacher who takes night classes, it's not like you can have that user belong to both the teachers and students organizational units at the same time.
Right, okay, so one org per person. So let me go into that. I'm going to go into the sales org, and I want to, then I go into services. So what I see here is the sales group organization is going to inherit any of the service settings I've set for collaboration corporation. So those are inherited. But I can then override that setting to turn certain ones on or off. Say I want to restrict video from the sales group. I would choose override this setting and off, and that would then restrict the video app from people in the sales group. I think this is a good time to bring up Google Plus. If you're considering using Google Plus, you need to, first you would actually need to enable that service for your organization. And when you enable that service, I believe that also you have to have Google profiles enabled. Looking for, there it is. So I have Google Plus enabled for the organization. I may then want to go into certain groups and disable that. So if you're not sure if you're ready to fully embrace Google Plus, maybe you want to turn that on for a sub-organization as an experiment. Okay, so see we have some questions coming in. One of those from Jan, what about users who require access to services enabled to two different suborgs? So Jan, I think what you'd want to do is maybe by default you would turn on all service. You would turn on a certain number of services, and then if you need, I think that you. How do you answer this question, Brian, Jan's question?
Well, so users who need to access a service enabled in two different suborgs, assuming that the I mean, essentially, I think that the service list would have to match. Unless I'm missing the crux of the question. What about users who require access to services enabled? So a user can only be in one suborganization at a time. So really, whatever suborg they would be in should in turn drive the services that are enabled.
And again, that might be a planning thing you'd want to do from the beginning, looking at your different users and who should be in what suborg.
Exactly. One of the things that we have seen since Google introduced the suborganization structure is the ability to synchronize organizational units within the directory sync utility as well.
Great,
so from
great.
Yeah.
And how, in Robert's question, can we apply permission to restrict access to the suborganization? I mean, allow some to have access to sales, but no NFU.
Not sure it's possible to restrict access to services, but when it comes to sharing, users, administrators would have the ability to set the ceiling for the maximum allowable or the maximum allowable sharing settings. So whether you want to share outside of a domain or not, but it in turn would be up to the individual users to then determine how best to share either documents or sites or even calendars. Hopeful that answered the question, Bob.
I'm going to, I think Bob had his hand up, so Bob, I can't unmute you because you haven't entered your audio pin. So.
I'll tell you what, Susan. Okay.
I just unmuted. Hi, Bob. You had a question? Nope. We missed him. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about conflicting accounts. So this is, so you might see this come up as you move to Google Apps and when you're creating users. And here's the situation. Before moving to Google Apps, you're working for LTech, before you decided to go on to Google Apps, users at your company may have signed up for some of Google's products using their business email address. Blogger, Picasa, Reader, even Docs and Calendar, they could have signed up for with your company's email address. And what happens is then you create Google Apps accounts for them, and now they have what's called a conflicting account because they have two names that are associated with two different groups of data. So what happens if a user has a conflicting account is when they try to log into their consumer product, meaning the non-Google Apps products, the non-paid products, they'll get an email saying, or they'll get a message saying you have a conflicting account. And there are two ways to handle this. One is that they will be prompted to go through the process of creating a new username that they can use to sign into that consumer account. So it can be a Gmail address, they can even associate it with a Yahoo address. Google will temporarily create this funny looking address here. So there's a process that they can go through that will allow them to create a new account associated. So instead of using their old account to access these products, they'll create a new account to access these products. So their work account is only used for Google Apps. The other option is to actually ask them to change the consumer account names before they're added to Google Apps. And Brian, you told me that there is a tool that tells you how many users are going to have conflicting accounts, just not who has them.
Yeah, so this isn't a formal survey question, but I'm sure if any of you had actually done an apps deployment over the past year and a half, you may have seen a warning or a message in your control panel warning you that there were users that had conflicting accounts. Because of Google's privacy policies, it wasn't possible to identify who the users were specifically by name or even by email address, but you did have the ability to communicate with the group so that you could determine really how many users in your organization would be affected.
Thanks. And I just want to answer John's question. A consumer account will end in @gmail.com, won't it? And no, that's not true. A consumer account can be associated with any email address, Gmail, Yahoo, including your domain. Okay, let's talk about renaming users. This is actually a somewhat new feature of Google, and it's great. So why would you want to rename a user? Well, if somebody changes their name, then you may want to rename the user. If maybe you spelled their name incorrectly when they first created them, you might need to rename that user. Or if you decide at first you were a small company and you could have people be Susan at LTech.com, and now you have 10 Susans, you may change the structure to S. Klein. I'm getting married next month, and so I'm changing my name, so we'll have to rename my user account. So what we would do is we'd go into organizations and users. I'm going to rename, who should I rename here? I don't know, can I rename my own account?
If you have sufficient administrative rights, yes.
Oh, well then let's do a search here. So I choose my account name. And then I just click rename. So I could even change the way my name appears in the directory here, or how it appears first and last name. So let's say I'm going to change it to my new married name. I select rename user. So I have now renamed the user. It's asking me to sign in again with my new username. Now the best thing about this is that when you rename a user, it automatically creates an alias with your old username. So here's my new username, and here under aliases or nicknames are my old username. So if someone was to send an email to my old address, it would come to my new username. Brian, anything to add about renaming users?
One of the gotchas there, well, I mean, they're all listed there pretty clearly, but this is actually a nice change. Historically, when this ability was first rolled out, there weren't a whole lot of, or I should say, there wasn't a whole lot of guidance for what to be aware of. So, you know, again, Google Talk will lose all remember chat invitations. User may not be able to chat for a period. The rename process can take up to 10 minutes, and the user will have to log out and log back in. So again, I mean, clearly listed there, and I would say administratively, keep an eye on it. Don't just click through it. Really understand what the implications are.
Perfect. So that's renaming a user. Okay, resetting passwords, that can be done in the control panel. So when would you reset a password, Brian? If somebody forgot their password, or if there was some kind of, maybe someone's phone was stolen or some security breach?
Sure. So, you know, if there's any concern about, well, you know, there's the innocent user for forgetting their password. There's the user who's no longer with the organization, and you want to make sure that they don't go in and delete all the emails in their email box or remove contacts. You want to preserve the email or the Google Apps account in a given state. You would definitely want to change their password. So yeah, I mean, you can either be you know, for very, very innocent reasons, or we'll say in the interest of self-preservation.
Got it. Okay. And that can be just so you just like change password, and you can change the password there. Now, what does reset sign-in cookies do?
So, Susan, that's a really good question. That link will basically log. It'll invalidate any session that the user already had open. So, if you have a user that has you know, apps open on a separate computer, let's say at home, by clicking on Reset Signing Cookies, it would actually log that user out even at home. For those of you, Susan, I'm not sure if you, one I'll say related feature, it's not in the control panel, but this is actually something that can be done by users and not just administrators. If you could jump to your mailbox, yep, and then scroll all the way down. At the very bottom of the page, there's a link where you can look at your account activity. You also have the ability to reset the signing cookies as a user there.
Where is that? I used to say sign out
Actually,
of all sessions.
Yeah, actually I'm looking.
Maybe that's because my account's not open in any other locations.
Potentially. Let me double check in mine. Because I know I'm logged in a few different places. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, if you're traveling and you realize, oh, I was at an internet cafe and I forgot to sign out of my Gmail account.
Yep.
So Tim has a question about contact sharing. Will enabling contact sharing share personal contacts with all users of a domain? And I'm going to try to answer that, and then Brian, correct me if I'm wrong. Contact sharing in Google Apps right now, the only contact sharing that exists is actually sharing other contacts on the domain. So there is no built-in contact sharing for sharing personal contacts at this time. Is that right, Brian?
That is correct, Susan. So one of the ways around that, users do have the ability to delegate access to their mailbox. When that happens, the person who has delegated access will have access to the person's mailbox as well as contacts. At this point in apps, it's not possible to only delegate contacts without delegating mailbox access as well.
We're hoping it's coming soon, though. It really should be.
I am very hopeful of that.
Okay. Let's talk now about suspending versus deleting users. So we're looking at sort of the life cycle of users. You're adding users. You're giving them access to services. You're resetting passwords. Now, what happens when you either need to suspend a user or delete a user, usually when a termination occurs? So what happens, let's start with deleting a user. What happens if I go into a user, Brian, and I select them and I choose what? Delete. What's going to happen?
Well, you're going to pick on the admin user, huh? So in this case here, Google's actually done a good job of making sure that you as an administrator are aware of what happens when you remove a user. Historically, this wasn't always the case. So when you remove a user now, you actually get this nice pop up with a whole lot of warnings, or a whole host of warnings. Please take this pretty seriously. I'll say from a support standpoint, you can open up if a user is deleted accidentally. You have up to 5 days to have Google support undelete that user. This won't allow a user to receive email after they've been deleted, but you can at least recover to the point that they were deleted. So one of the implications is that when you delete a user, they will no longer, assuming you have mail enabled on that particular user's account, messages that are addressed to that user will in fact bounce.
Okay. So now there's also the option to suspend a user. So to suspend a user, they're all super admins here. I'll take CR48 Chrome.
There we go.
Okay. I'm going to, I choose this user, and I think the option to suspend is actually here.
Yep.
In the user area.
Yep. Actually, if you scroll up a little bit, Susan, and to your right.
Yeah. To my right.
One of the buttons.
Suspend user. Okay. So when a user is suspended, they're no longer able to, they are no longer able to sign into their account. However, the account still exists. It's still counting against your license quota, right?
That is correct.
And what happens? So email, calendar invitations, those will be blocked. They won't be getting, what about shared docs? Would that suspended account still receive shared docs?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
We may need to check on that. So what I think, Brian, you mentioned to me the other day, what you recommend instead of deleting a user, let's say someone's terminated, you suspend that user, and then you want to make sure that their email is still getting received. So let's say we're going to suspend this user. I think you were saying you can create if the user is suspended, can we create a Google group with the same email address?
Well, it actually can't be. It can't have the same name. So typically, in those instances, what we would do is rename the user to something nonsensical. Let's say ZZZ CR48. If you'll notice, one of the things when you rename an account, it will create an alias of the previous name. So the previous username in this case here is CR48. So what we would need to do is then remove that alias, or I keep saying alias using, this is something you even brought up earlier. Not a great name, or it's not actually referred to as an alias. It's an alias within Google. It's actually a nickname.
Okay, so CR48, he has been terminated. What we did is we changed his username to ZZZCR48. We deleted the nickname. Then we're going to create a Google group called CR-48, and we're going to have that sent to a CR48 manager, so that the manager is getting emails that are trying to go to CR48. Then when we get a new user, right, so then someone new is hired, let's say a week later, we could just rename this user. Is that what we're recommending, yeah, Brian?
Well, so there are a couple things that can be done. So in this instance, if you have a new hire, let's say taking over responsibilities for CR48, there are a couple things that can be done. You can actually migrate data out of the existing ZZZZ CR48 account to that new user's account. Optionally, you can delegate access. So if you don't remove the user, you can simply grant the new user access to the terminated employee's email box.
And the other thing we want to show is the area where you can transfer doc ownership. Where is that? I forget what that is sometimes. Is that under services? Do you remember where that is, Brian?
Yes. So Susan, if you go into settings, and then docs.
Okay, right. So this is where we set up Google Docs, and below here,
yep.
Actually,
I believe.
I don't see it.
Oh, pardon me then. Let me double check if it's in advanced tools. The layout keeps, perhaps in advanced.
Google Apps, continuous innovation. So there is an area, here it is, document owner transfer. So CR48 was terminated. I'm going to take all of these docs associated with their email address and transfer them to myself. And that way we won't lose any of their docs. So I'd like to just take this quick poll. I'm curious, what are you currently doing when an employee is terminated? Are you suspending them and assigning the account to a new user, keeping the account, deleting, suspending, or something else? Do you have a process here? Okay, so I'm seeing about almost half of you are voting here, and I'll just show you what we have so far. So it's kind of all over the board what people are doing here with terminations. Okay, I know we're running out of time here. Again, bring up that known issue. At this time, you cannot search for users by first or last name. You actually have to search by username.
Susan,
And then I want to...
that one is a little bit inconsistent. We do have an open ticket with Google, and it is a known issue. Unfortunately, we haven't really received a date of when the fix will be implemented. I'll say it's hit or miss.
Okay, Tim, I just unmuted your account. Tim, are you there?
I am.
Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh, okay. I think maybe you clicked something, your hand went up, but thanks. Know what we wanted to, I forgot to bring this up earlier, and Brian has reminded me that we wanted to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. If you go to google.com, they have a cute little video here. Have you watched this yet, Brian?
I have not.
It's a cute little video. Unfortunately, my sound doesn't come through, but think about maybe finding love on the internet. So you might want to check out this cute video here. We have some upcoming webinars. You can always look at ltech.com/events to learn about our upcoming webinars. I think we've got one coming up about best practices for Google Docs. We have an update on the latest features of Google Apps. That's March 16th. And then in May, we're doing a special webinar about Amazon Web Services. Also on our website, you can join our training community. So we send out, if you're in charge of Google Apps training, I encourage you to fill out the form and join our training community to get helpful hints and tips and guides for Google Apps training. I think that we have a time for about one or two more questions. One from Jenna. Can you review how to apply company-wide signatures?
Good question. That actually can't be done via the control panel, but it can be done programmatically with the user settings API. So I'll say that's one of those features that is not baked in to the web interface, but it is possible.
And Damien says, taking the subject back for a second, when using SSO, do password changes in Google take place in Active Directory instantly? How do these password changes work? Good question, Damien.
Sure. Damien, good question. I'll say it depends on the SSO that's being used. So LTech does in fact have a single sign-on product that when a user changes their password from within SSO, it will essentially try to update the password in the LDAP server first. If the password change is successful in the LDAP environment, it will then push the password out to apps. There are some SSOs out there that will only change the password on the LDAP side. It will not change it on the Google Apps side. The implication there is that for your users that are not using a web-based interface to access apps, like an IMAP client or mobile device, or if you're using Google Apps Sync from Microsoft Outlook, they would continue to use their old Google password. They wouldn't have their password changed.
Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
Okay, everyone, we're going to have to close it up now, but if there are some remaining questions, feel free to email us at training@ltech.com. You can also email us at training@ltech.com with your suggestions for upcoming webinars. We do these once a month, and we will be emailing out the access to our Vimeo channel with the recorded webinar. And thanks everyone for joining, and it's great to see you guys. Thank you, Brian. Maximum,
thank you very much,
for your technical input here.
No problem at all. No problem at all, Susan.
And happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.